That's great. Thank you, Don. Oh, man. Good enough.
Good enough.
Ask the questions.
What are the relative benefits or shortcomings of solid wood versus laminate wood construction? And how do they sound different?
Plywood's good. It's in the old Yamahas. It sounds kind of glassy, though. So you get low end because it's thin if the bracing's light, but you get a top end that's kind of glassy and shimmers. Kind of like old tailors that you don't really want to play.
Interesting.
But solid wood always sounds bigger and fuller when it's done right.
Glassy. Oh. Have you ever considered bracing a guitar top with glass then?
No.
Or not. What about making it?
But the old Waldzithers out of Germany use glass bridges, and they sound terrible that way. But no. Back to plywood. Very stable, very easy to take care of. If done wrong, sounds horrible. Solid, if done wrong, sounds horrible. But you always get a little bit more low and a little bit more high. So.
Why do all new, non-nylon acoustic guitar strings sound bad, and why do all old acoustic guitar strings sound the same? Don't look at me.
I think that's a skip. Should we skip that question?
We should skip that.
No,
This is so
nah, if he means or she means the brightness of the strings, I understand. They're kind of ringy. The strings sound like strings until they settle in for a week or two. Is that what you mean? Is that what you mean?
I don't want to cut out the me things.
That's okay. That's okay. If that's what you mean, if it's the brightness of the strings that's the problem, then I understand. I don't like it either. They always sound better after a few weeks. But all the old guitar strings, after a certain point, sound kind of similar because the cores are so damped that they stop giving off any sort of sound except a thunk. So I understand what you mean there, but you're going to find everybody will disagree about that one way or another.
Are rubber bridge guitars the Floyd Rose tremolo of the modern age?
Yes, and they come back in cycles just like Floyd Rose's. At least that's my anticipation.
Favorite blue chip flavor?
It's in here somewhere. My friend Mike gave me a CT55 years ago, and so I got 2 of them with my name on it. Thank you, sir.
Well done.
And he's at the bench over there.
Barbie or Oppenheimer?
Stop that. I know that's not a question. I've seen neither.
What's the most underrated, best value, cheap, 60s-ish acoustic guitar? They said guitars plural, but I'm assuming they don't know.
What does that even mean?
I think it means having your... sorry,
So
I gotta
you-
get out of the announcement.
so if you're
I think
not-
it means having your cake and eating it, too.
Yeah, so it's if it's not a Gibson or if it's not a Martin where it's mad money, if you're talking about cheap, you're thinking like what, under $500?
I'd say so.
The old Gretsch flat tops are kind of heavy, but they sound really, really good when they're gone through, but they are so crappy when you haven't fixed them. I like those a lot. Old Guilds are fun, but they're getting expensive.
I mean, I believe...
What do you like?
Someone replied to this comment saying it was old Yamahas.
Well, of course old Yamahas, but they're not really 60s. They debuted sort of late 60s. 66 was the first. So yeah, Yamahas counts. That's fair. That would be the best guitar you could buy for a few $100. Get it fixed up and it's worth its weight. That's for sure.
Why does the inside of my Gibson look like it was made in a high school shop class?
It's got to be Rob Gardner. Because high school shop class is no tone.
How often do you really, with 5 A's, no, maybe 6,
So really,
need a setup. I've heard 6 months to a year, but some of my best playing guitars have gone much longer without.
yeah,
What's your ideal?
it's guitar to guitar. So if it feels crappy, it probably needs a setup. Most guitars, the geometry stays mostly the same between the top and the bridge and the nut and whatnot if it's already been set up. But a lot of what changes on a modern guitar is the truss rod. So usually you need truss rod tweaks every time the weather changes dramatically. But there are plenty of older guitars that can go for years and years and years and years without needing any adjustment at all. And they might drift a little bit up and down, but they'll often stay the same. Like old Gibsons are often like that. The Martin small bodies are like that. The Martin dreadnoughts tend to move around. So if the guitar feels bad, it probably needs an adjustment.
What is your Rope 5 vintage acoustic guitars, not Gibson or Martin? Sorry.
My Rope 5?
I've never heard that before. I've never heard that before. Like,
I think it's top that's been changed by Siri or something.
Rope, like... Can you edit comments on Instagram? Like,
I think that
can you like you could have like gone back and read your comment, you know, like, and then like, you know, whatever. Like,
I'm not gonna rewrite the Bible, okay?
Okay, all right.
My Rope 5 guitars, like we were talking about, cable 1 would be Yamahas. The old Yamahas are so good. The little O size ones, the 110s and the 160s, some of the best guitars you'll ever play for the money. After they're fixed, they're terrible until they're fixed. The old Guild small bodies are kind of still pretty okay, but they're not cheap anymore. Sometimes I like Hagströms, but like the Bjarten made ones, those are cool. Goyas are also pretty cool. I don't know. There's no such thing as a really good guitar. They're all kind of failures in one way or another. But yeah. Yamahas are good. Goyas are good. Guilds are good. What else? What do you guys like?
Eppies?
Eppies? Yeah, 50s Eppies. The 60s Eppies don't count because they're Gibsons.
I like basses.
Ansel likes basses. All right. Next.
How do I get sideburns like that?
Unhygienic practices. Next.
Do you sell any of the rubber bridges you make?
Not as just the bridges, but they're just the bottom of grout floats for tiling work. You can just go press your finger into any of them at the hardware store and find the one that's sort of like in the middle of sponginess, and that's the one you want to use.
What are some good, cheap pickups?
Does anybody remember Bezdez up in Canada on eBay? Because I used to buy a bunch of Danelectro pickups from them. It was like all the Korean stuff for like $15 or $20 a pop. They don't have as much stuff, so now it's like Guitar Madness. They sell the same Korean weird stuff for $15 or $20 a pop, and they sound really good. Just get the ones that are spec'd out the way you like. And there's a whole bunch of like, I know there's a whole bunch of these new boutique-y things. I keep saying, I'll get back to that.
How dare you trample upon the legacy of Fralin and Seymour Duncan by promoting such import trash?
I don't think that's a question. That's Ansel's question.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Pickups are a coil around magnets. They're not that complicated.
Might get canceled for that one.
I know, it's okay.
What gauge strings would be the best for GDAE tuning on a 1930s Maybell tenor guitar 23-inch scale length? Sincerely, the owner of a 1930s Maybell tenor guitar with a 23-inch scale length. Fumbled that.
No, it's okay. 42 or 44 for the G, 32 or 30 for the D, 20 or 22 wound for the A, and 11, 12, or 13 for the E, whatever you can handle. The necks are not going to like any of that, though. So your mileage may vary. If the neck starts warping when you tune it up, use lighter strings.
Why the hell did Ringo and Paul think that it was okay to make that crappy song with AI?
Humans are humans. We like we like toys.
Well, I haven't listened to that.
I haven't listened to it either, but I'm not a big Beatles fan.
Yeah, well, I won't say that either. How dare
That's
you?
okay.
How dare you?
Andy is our house Beatles fan.
Resident Beatles fan.
We rope him off in his own corner with the violins, so that we don't have to deal with it.
I don't know. You ever wonder if God stays in heaven because he too lives in fear of what he's created? That's all I'm saying.
That's good.
Here's a question. That's what they said. Here's a question. Well, I hope it's a question. How do you know when frets need to be replaced?
Oh, that's a good question.
Good one.
That's actually a good question.
So, I like to level and dress frets as much as I can until you can't level and dress them no more. So, if your frets, if the divots in your frets are not right down to the fretboard bottom, you can still make use of those frets by leveling and dressing them, whether they then feel good to you or not, or if they play in tune or not. If the top can't be sloped up enough to make a fine enough point, is up to the way you play and what you like. But generally, these days, people like medium or bigger frets, so replace them if you can't stand them no more after a level and a dress job.
How do you flatten the top on a ladder brace guitar that has sunken around the sound hole / fingerboard extension?
Yeah, that means the top looks like this, like they all do, every single one of them, no matter how well they're built, because the bracing pattern sucks. As long as the braces are glued up tight, don't worry about it. Why would you flatten it? It's just going to go back to the same thing again.
Unless you X-brace it.
Well, yeah, Ansel is right now X-bracing an old Oscar Schmidt guitar that all the braces were loose on. And so that's going to fix that problem because that top looks like that too. But you can add braces going with the grain of the top to either side of the sound hole if you really want the sound hole area to be straight, but everything else is just going to get crazy anyway. It's just the way those guitars do their thing. But if you really want to make it flat, you can. Just say don't worry about it.
Tips for setting up an old Danelectro, bridge adjustment versus maybe shimming neck, etc.
It's just like a Fender, except that they don't have individual adjustment at the saddle, so you need to put the compensation in for the unwound G and the low E strings and whatnot by hand. You just have to file it in. That's what we do every time we work on one.
Have you ever seen the Australian guy on YouTube that does the poor man's neck resets with steam, never removing the neck? What's your take on this kind of thing? Have you ever tried any neck reset shortcuts or think that an acceptable version exists?
Andy, can we have more beer, please? Thank you. Do you have a cup over there? 2. There's a violin bridge here. Sweet. So, we're talking about the guy that injects a whole shitload of steam into the guitars, I think. And then he clamps the necks back into the shape. He basically steams the whole interior of the guitar, clamps everything back to where he wants it to be, like more like where it was factory. And then lets it do that for a long time. And then lets it sit and cool down and dry out. And I'm sure that works just as well as people who heat press necks to get them straight again. It probably works for a while and then goes bad.
Oh, shit. I think they're asking about cheap-ass neck resets.
No. This is something different. I've seen it. It's they put a whole shitload of steam in the body, and they actually flex the joints backwards with steam and heat and let it settle again, just like you would be like curving wood with the steam. We'll get to cheap-ass neck resets.
Yeah.
At any rate, this works just like it's the same idea as the heat pressing like a warped neck. You're trying to use wood's ability to suck up moisture and conform to your clamping, and then you're praying that it will stay that way. And sometimes it stays that way for 6 months or 8 months, maybe a year. Once in a while, it actually lasts for a decade. But I have a feeling it just goes right back, and you might as well just reset the neck and be done with it. Cheap-ass neck resets. Yes, I do lots of cheap-ass neck resets. And maybe we'll do a video exclusively about that. It's the way I do all old Yamahas, just because it's fast and functional. And
Anyway, one word, to compensate, or suggestions of having to always tune or retune when using capos. I have tried so many capos, even capital S, some with adjustable springs, but on certain guitars of mine, I always have to tune and retune after.
okay, use a better capo. I like... Oh, shoot. Do we have any of these?
Yeah.
Yeah. Give me your capos. Give me your
Wait.
capos.
You have mine.
I have yours.
Yeah, you took it.
That's just
No,
like me.
That's some bullshit.
Anyway, this is my favorite capo for a long time. It's the NS design one where it has this little screw adjuster that lets you set the tension.
NS stands
You
for
can-
not sucking.
Yeah. You can, if you need to change the radius of the insert here, you can do that by just bending it, right? Watch the beer.
Watch the beer, kid.
Oh yeah. Here's the modern version of it. They don't make this one anymore. They make one that looks like it, but it's not as good. This is the normal version of it. And they also make one with this like a fancy one for $30 with this like finger touch material that I really like. I have 2 of them, and somebody is always coming in the workshop and taking the one that I like. So I have one in the house that I leave in the house. These work really well because you can adjust the tension on it. Oh, and put the capo as close to your fret as you possibly can, and make sure that it's not squeezing the strings down beyond the fret height too much. That would be putting out of tune. Also check your intonation at the saddle, make sure that it's been compensated correctly, because no matter how good a capo is, if your guitar doesn't really play in tune at the 12th fret, it's not going to play in tune with a capo. Here you go, Andy.
This is my favorite one.
Okay.
Do you have a Grover open back tuner for a 21D28?
No, not right now. And is that a trick question anyway?
I don't know.
I don't think that's a trick question.
That's kind of great.
I like it.
What's your favorite mandolin that you've ever played / worked on, and why?
What favorite? How do you have a favorite? It's my own. It's my own that I learned on. It has a giant ass neck. It was made by John Gindelsperger in Kentucky, I think. I don't think either of you guys have seen it.
I know.
At any rate,
I'm surprised you kept an instrument for that long.
I learned on it, so I got used to his giant ass neck, so it actually hurts me to play any other mandolin for long periods of time. But aside from that, there are very many fine mandolins. I owned a Gibson F2 for a while I really liked, but I'm kind of bored of the Gibson tone just because they come in all the time. I'm sorry, everybody.
You might
The Lion and Healy
mandolin mafia.
mandolins are gorgeous. The fancy ones, the carved top ones with the crazy tailpiece and everything. Those are absolutely lovely. If it's mandolin family instruments, my friend Hugh in Maine has one of those scroll Gibson mandocellos. That's the shit. Next.
What older acoustics have wider necks other than 1 11/16 that sound great?
Lots. Next. Sorry, it's true.
How do you balance running a very successful and busy business? Whoa there, those some big words. I don't know about being a husband and / father and making your own music. Are you a Da Vinci napper?
Did Andy write this one?
Did you write this?
I did not write. I did not write that. The answer is no, I don't. But thank you.
Here's the neat part. You don't.
I think the best thing in the world is trying.
Yeah.
Step-by-step instructional video for your harmony / K / silvertone guitar and bass conversions. Love these.
Sure, we'll do one at some point. I'll do a photo essay. Yeah, whatever.
Basic soldering techniques. I bought a kit about a year ago. Have some guitars that need some work, but feel paralyzed as I haven't been showed anything in person.
Are you local? Do you want to come in and I will teach you basic soldering techniques? I can teach Ansel too. Ba, 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 ba.
Alright, that was slow. God, I was waiting for that too. Like, I read that question. You're gonna get me for the.
I'm just kidding. Soldering is hard. It really is. It's really easy to mess it up.
Stupid.
And no, you're not stupid. Neither is the person asking. My two key things: don't try to heat the wire that you're soldering. Heat the point of contact that wire is going to first. Get it up to temperature. Then wick your solder onto it. And don't overuse your solder. Don't use too much. You don't need all that much. And just be careful on like the back of volume pots. It's really easy to burn them out if you leave the soldering iron on it just even a little too long. And be choosy about your wire. Don't use the cheapest ass stuff because the actual poly sleeves for them will melt and get all over your wire and then things won't solder together. I have a batch of wire right now. It's pissing me off because it does that.
Adjusting action / intonation on acoustics with particular focus as to when is the nut or saddle. I read that right. With particular focus as to when is it the nut or this is giving me like.
You want to know how to set up your guitar. You want simple instructions for it.
The highs and lows, i.e., I can set up this. This give. I thought the.
This is good. You want to know how to set up a guitar, and you want to know the process. The process we use. Hold on. Say your neck angle is good. Say your frets are good. Say your neck has been made straight with the truss rod, if it has a truss rod. What we do then is we put a capo on the first fret. That makes a perfect nut at the first fret. Whew. Then we can adjust the saddle to the height and radius it needs to be to match the fretboard to get 1/16 from the fret top to the string bottom on the high E, 3/32 on the low E, and like a graduated height between those peaks with the radius of the saddle. Then you take the capo off and you adjust your nut and you check your action again and tweak it. The nut is always the last thing. Always the last thing. If you're trying to set up your guitar in the action height and you haven't adjusted your nut properly, it's not going to be right. And that's like, I see guitar shops do this all the time where they'll try to tweak everything by the bridge saddles or the truss rod, and they don't get the nut dialed in and everything's thrown off. And it's not their fault, they were just never taught how to do it. Anyway, next. Really?
Yeah.
No way. There's some more in there, aren't there? Sweet. We're done? I love it. Sweet.
See any of those.
Here you go.
Cool.
Bye.
This has concluded Ask Jake.